just thank you all for being so gracious as to do this in English, because I have but 2 words of Swedish, so thank you very much.
And to begin with, just for you who maybe don't know that much about Bryony, she's a British playwright, has been writing over 20 plays, won tons of awards. Her play, Your Play, sorry for speaking above your head, has been produced all over the world, and we were very lucky to do a play called Frozen. Now, where is Margareta? She's still here? Yes, she is! A play called Frozen here a couple of years ago with Margareta in it, and which we all loved, and therefore Björn and I, who run this theatre, were thrilled when we found this new play for us, Stockholm. So thank you so much for coming here tonight. And we will have this talk for about 30 minutes, and we will leave some room in the end for you to ask questions.
Before we dig in, for those of you who don't know us, my name is Björn Lund, this is Elisabeth Claesson.
You mean we're not that well known?
A few may have listened.
A few.
But a few. We are the artistic directors and run this theatre. But first of all, it almost happened so that you didn't come here. Tell us what happened.
I was all set to come for 2 nights, tonight and tomorrow night. And then last Friday, I came back from an evening out, and I had been burgled. My front door had been kicked in, and my very good neighbours caught the man, and he ran off. Okay. But for the first 2 or 3 days, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I didn't want to leave my house. Oh. And also my door was, I thought somebody's going to come back. So I sent a little tearful note saying, I can't come.
It was Monday morning, and I went...
Yeah. So Björn sent a very sweet email saying, is there any way we can persuade you? And I thought, it's the Stockholm. And I'd been so looking forward to it. So I could only come for this night because I'm dealing with the police, and I'm having to practically sleep with the people who are doing my door to get my door fixed in time, because I'm going to see the Toronto version of Stockholm on Monday. So I'm so pleased. Can I just say what a completely thrilling production it was. I'm speechless with how much I liked it. Because despite the fact you didn't use my 2 words of Swedish, it was just wonderful. It's always wonderful watching a great production, because it's lovely watching 2 actors. So because I just watch how they act, and how you move them around the stage. So and luckily I know the play, so I had such a good time, and I can't tell you how pleased I am that I came.
Good.
So, yeah.
Good.
So
am I.
Good joke. So why don't you tell us a bit about how this play came about?
Okay. This is a play I made with a group called Frantic Assembly, who are two directors who they commission new plays, but they also want to do movement in it. They do very extreme movement, and they asked me to do it, and they said the title is Stockholm, and it's about a relationship where they have Stockholm syndrome. And I was very interested to see if I could work with a physical theatre. And we had a 2-week workshop. And at first I was trying to write when they'd made a scene. They would, for example, the bit where these two meet. That came because they said to the people in the workshop, could you just have a knife and fork each and eat each other? And so they kept making physical pieces, and I kept trying to write the scene, and every time I wrote the scene I thought, it's happening twice. And I realised that movement, physical movement and text, they want to occupy the same place on stage, which is centre stage. And so we had to work out what would be the movement and what would be the text. So I simply sat and watched for 2 weeks while 2 dancers and 2 actors played. You know, they did scenes in the bed, and there were no words at all. And then when, after 2 weeks, I was desperate to go and write it, and I did.
And
yeah,
you mentioned, when we had lunch before, you mentioned about their names, because Carly and Todd are not quite normal names, even in English, so to speak.
I thought because I knew I was using a lot of swearing, and because your character uses a lot of swearing to disrespect and turn him off his family, I wanted to do something artful. So that's why they also have rather beautiful speeches, as well as fuck off, you know, that sort of thing. And I also wanted them to have slightly mythic. So Todd felt it could be a normal name, almost, in England, but it's also German for death. And Carly, it's almost an English name, so it's usually Kaylee, or but it's also the goddess of trouble and you know, disease in India. And so I just wanted to give their horrible journey a sort of beauty as well, and something that was a bit more than very ordinary names.
What made you become a playwright in the first place?
I don't think we choose theatre. I think theatre chooses us. And I was telling these two at lunchtime. I met, when I was doing my degree, I met one of those teachers. You know, you all have a teacher that was very special to you. And this was Mr. Stanley, who he taught drama, and he encouraged me to write. And the last thing he said when I'd done my degree, I said, what should I do? And he said, I think you should go into theatre because you're absolutely hopeless at real life. Which has proved true. And I just, you know, as soon as I started, because as you see I'm I'm very old. At the time, I had no idea, sort of early feminism, that I could make a living as a writer. So I just simply carried on until theatre picked me and said, no, I'm having you, and I found my people.
You've also written a book about
the women's women's writer's handbook.
Do you know, I'd love to claim that. I'm one chapter in that. And I haven't read that for years. I don't know if I agree with myself anymore.
Because when we did some research, first of all, it was you as the author, and secondly, it was of all these feministic things you're doing.
Sorry, I'll just take focus while
You do that! Do you focus?
That's the whole idea.
Okay, I have. No,
Okay.
no, thank you.
Want 2 glasses?
I'll work with the one. Sorry.
No, but that you've been very involved in like feministic work, and that your work was classified as feministic. Would you agree, or?
Oh, absolutely. I think for a long time I just I felt quite often in England at this time, a lot of people suddenly realised that there are all these wonderful actresses, but they were going up for parts, and like there would be a cast of 8 and 20, 40 women were going for one part. And so there was a huge kind of fire to make work. And I did that for a bit. Just I thought I will always make sure there are more women than men. And I did that for a few years. And then it became the wrong thing to do. You know, I was becoming more of a social worker than so I mean, for the past, I've just done 2 plays with mostly men, which was interesting. One was set on it was an immersive piece set in a submarine, and I tried everything to get women in, but there are no women in submarines. We could do moustaches, so. But mostly my work is informed by, feminist sensibility. Which doesn't sound like a bag of laughs, but you know, it's more fun than it sounds. Yeah.
From what we understand, most of your plays are commissioned by someone.
Yes.
Is that by choice, or is that just how it works in general? Once you've made it, so to speak, then you get commissioned, and that's that, or how does that
Have
work?
I made it?
Obviously,
I would say
obviously
so.
You've arrived, so to speak.
Okay, I didn't know. Yes, I mean, because I've worked so long, is that mostly people come to me with ideas, and also, I mean, now somebody comes and says we want to do something set on a submarine, and that wouldn't be my first idea. Some girls on the submarine. Because I like, you know, what I like doing is writing, and I like whatever I learn from it. So working out just, you know, how men think when they're all together. You know, that I'm never going. Yes, I mean.
So then, when you say what you learned from it, what did you learn from this experience, writing Stockholm, working in Stockholm?
Obviously, not a lot of Swedish, but
2 words. I learned how much I really love watching tonight was how much I love the boldness of paying attention to a physicality that isn't, you know, quite a lot of English drama is they walk, you know, they may run, but that's, you know, and that it was how my mind as an audience it takes me to different places in my head and in my heart than just watching. I mean, I'm just trying to think, if you took all the physicality out of that, well, it just wouldn't be as nice, would it? I mean, it just wouldn't be as passionate. And it just, you know, I was watching it, I was struck by how much passion these two have. And to just show that through a small scene where they're talking at one another would be so little. That's one thing I learnt. The other thing that I should have learnt is things like, you know, she gives him a blowjob, and then I watch it and I think, why do you do that to actors?
Why do you?
It's because I don't think. It's you know, I come to rehearse and I think, oh, you know, what thing was having to rehearse that. I mean, it's a beautiful blowjob.
Thank you. So another thing, since the play Frozen that we also did, and for those of you who don't know that, was about a pedophile, pedophile,
Serial killer.
And pedophile. So it's a very brutal, also a brutal subject, and there's brutality in this, and we know that you've done a boxing play, and the play you're working on now, you said started out with the bomb in the London subway. So
yes, I'm writing a play that takes as its source a woman who lost her legs in the bombs on the underground. It's interesting. I mean, when you said that Frozen is about a paedophile, I mean,
Well, it's not about that, but
no,
it's an element of the, so to speak.
I noticed that both it. I was thinking because you know, the people who've done Frozen are here. That it's also, I'm really fascinated that this has it in it. It's about forgiveness as well, and revenge, and I had a director who I'd written some scene, and she said, Bryony, we're going to cut out all this teacup dialogue. And I said, what do you mean by teacup dialogue? And it's you know, would you like a cup of tea? It just doesn't seem much point doing that when you can explore something that's as knotty, as difficult as when does love and forgiveness become the wrong thing to do, and when does it become dangerous? And as I was saying at lunch, I'd rather we rehearse the hard things on stage. I'd rather see brutality there than here, than elsewhere. And I also like seeing actors, you know, having huge things to do. And I'm not talking about
your play Frozen was did very well in the UK, obviously, and then went to to New York and actually eventually went to Broadway. What was that experience like? Is that something you wish for as a British playwright, or is is it shameful?
It's very nice if somebody talks back to me in rehearsals. I say, you know, I'm a Tony-nominated playwright. I say to Elizabeth, Frozen started off really slowly. It started in Birmingham, which is a regional theatre. It was in a 900-seater, and it played to about 200 every night. And then nothing happened to it for 4 years. And then I'd like to pretend it was sheer talent, but I think what happened was there was a gap in the National Theatre, and so they did that. So it's very slow. And people say, you were on Broadway, but it had sort of happened before I thought, oh, I'm on Broadway. So that's not what floats my boat. It's how do I learn that? Or so, not that it wasn't wonderful, but it isn't necessarily the thing that I remember. Like, I'm on Broadway. It's more the stuff that happens in rehearsals.
So what is your best theatre experience?
Apart from this.
Like a scene in the play.
It is like a scene in the play. Before this.
You're gonna smack me if I say something else, aren't you? Gosh. It's a real cliche, but saying, it's like saying, which of your children do you like most? And I can only give it, I'm just going back to the submarine. I mean, just doing the research of going into a nuclear submarine and thinking, this is the bomb shop, and that's a nuclear torpedo, and that's a nuclear, it's always like those moments, or almost always in any experience. It's in any theatre I do. Actually, the best moment is usually the run you have in the rehearsal room when the set's not there. And there's something about that magic that's always, when I think about giving up theatre because, I'm not appreciated enough, or, actors are cutting my lines, I think there's always something like that makes me think, I get paid for this. I mean, it's just, but I couldn't do, it's that, one moment.
In terms of how you go about actually writing plays, I think it's easy to think, if you're not a playwright, that the first thought that comes to mind is, it's going to be a play about something, proving something, or asking a specific question. But is that how it works, or how does it actually work?
It works differently each time. To do Stockholm, because that's the experience we just had, is that I was given the title and the vague area of the subject matter, and this is why, forgive me, it's why I thought, how am I going to suggest to an audience that it's not about Stockholm Syndrome? Which is why I said I made the couple, you know, I pretended the couple were going to Stockholm, your city, so they'd think, oh, okay, something's going to happen, but, and then with this, it's just, if you leave me 2 weeks in a room with no writing, I'm desperate to write. But it's always different things. And there's always a moment which any writer here will know is when you think, everything I'm writing is dull and awful. And I think possibly that's it. I used to be able to write and now I can't. And I have in my workroom, and perhaps the burglar came in to read this. I've got a quotation by Virginia Woolf, who said, I will remind myself that I always feel like this. Because there's always the moment when you're about to make something, when you just feel like you're going through fog. And then you suddenly, something about the structure starts coming together, and it's, and you become almost as inarticulate as I am now about, you know, that one gets a feeling of excitement and possibility, and that's just the first bit. And then you keep going wrong and wrong and wrong and right, and then it starts happening each time in a different way, I think.
And you said before, and I never know how it's going to end.
No, I set out without knowing the end. Because again, to talk about Stockholm, I think that means that there's something like when they're in the cellar, when that sprung out of something. And I don't think, if I'd have thought, okay, I'm going to have this scene, this scene, this scene, and this scene, I don't think it would have worked out that way. So I sometimes think the journey I try and take people on is a bit, you know, swervy. And other writers think, oh, of course. And I don't do that.
Let's ask you people, since we have Bryony here, because I know many of you, yes.
Tallulah Bankhead, tell us about your relationship.
Who is Tallulah?
To begin with, well, and you wrote a biography.
I did, yes. And it doesn't reflect well on me at all. I used to leave things much too late, and I suddenly realised I said I would write a small biography of Tallulah Bankhead, and it was really early days of the internet, and I didn't know quite how to use it. And I said to my sister, will you look on the internet and find out any books about Tallulah Bankhead? And she looked on and she said, well, there's 3, and she named 2, and she said, and one is by you. And I said, when does it say it's out? And it was, you know, in 2 months, so I wrote like mad. And it was just, I do like doing things that I think I can't do to see if I can do them, but I'm never going to put myself through that again because my heart won't stand it.
You had a question, yes?
I wonder if you had a feminine perspective to the play Stockholm, because it felt to me like Carly, who is the bad guy in this couple, she feels left out, and she tries to reach postcard, and he feels a bit remote and distant. Even when she gives him a blowjob, he's thinking of the walls and the ceiling, and to be controlled is more like a male ability, and she's the more sensitive. So I wonder if was it a feminine perspective, or did it just come out that way?
I did have worries that that actually most Stockholm syndrome is the other way around. I thought if I did that he is the person who is the first one that hits, that it would be much more about his strength. What I want the two of them to do is that I think her blowjob is controlling. I think she gives him a blowjob to keep him, you know, she's not letting him talk to his parents or his friends on his birthday, and in one sense that's awful, you know, and it's terrible behaviour. On the other hand, she is it seems to me so desperately insecure that she can't let him, she can't trust him. And I think the thing when she's in the attic, when she talks about why she hates families, there's some terrible insecurity in her. I don't know if you agree. So I'm trying to make them both equally active in keeping
Controlling each other.
the badness in that house together, because and I try and imagine, you know, that how many times how has he let her swear, you know, be vile about his mother. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but what I'm trying to do is make it about two people doing the wrong thing, and that he's doing things which seem loving, but actually compound it. I'm not sure I've answered it. Okay.
Yes, thank you. Could I just ask you, being an actor myself, because I've always asked myself, at what point did this playwright I'm now rehearsing decide that yes, the play is finished? I finished the play. For instance, at what point did you finish this play that we saw tonight? Is it the same always? The feeling, is it the same, or is it?
Almost never. Because we're taught in England, you know, there are 3 types of playwright. There's dead and unavailable. There's living and unavailable, and living and available. Almost every time I find that somebody's doing it again, doing the play again, because you know we're working on it. Always a different actor. I always find something. I think, oh, if I made him say that, or if we just did that a bit differently. But what I mean to do is I don't think, I was hearing about how Swedish theatre muck about with people's texts with interest. What I try and do is, I try as hard as possible to have it right by first day of rehearsal. And usually I change a few things, and we may lose a scene or do a rewrite, but I don't think it's the practice of rehearsal to rewrite. Having said that, when I've just done a play about boxing, that we change constantly. I've done it with Frantic Assembly, who I did Stockholm with, and I kept coming in, and I'd written what, in my view, was a beautiful scene where it's a fight, it's a boxing match, and the boys, as I call them, the boys, they're in their 30s, the boys said, we're going to do this all physically. Or as they said, we're going to choreograph the fuck out of it, Brian. And didn't have wasn't a word left of mine. So this playwright never, but some playwrights I know say it's no, don't change it. But they're more secure than me.
They're unavailable.
Any other questions?
Well, there's the obvious one, of course. Please do tell us those two magic Swedish words.
To be impressed. I learned them in the cab from the driver. Tack. And Garten. And we did try all the way from the airport for me to teach me how to say you're welcome, which is
Varsågod.
Varsågod.
Yeah.
But I got to Waterloo, he said, no, not Waterloo. Because if I could had more time and hadn't been dealing with the police, I would have learned more words, because I do think it's rude to come to somebody's country and not know at least how to say please and thank you. And I did spend the afternoon, just before I came, reading. I did try and learn. My hotel room has lots of books in it, but they're all in Swedish. And the only one I could even begin was it's
Busiga bebis. Busiga bebis.
Busiga bebis. That's the only one I could understand.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.